Hello again, and welcome to MLR Weekly as presented by Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy in New York City. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you again. We have a very cool show. We have two owners. We have San Diego's Ryan Patterson and Chicago's Peter Bernick coming up. Rugby Wrap-Up's MLR Weekly brought to you by Sheehy Auto Stores. It's easy at Sheehy. The Pig and Whistle, New York City. The world's best rugby pub. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle. To the plate, San Diego Legion owner Ryan Patterson. Ryan, welcome back to MLR Weekly.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's my second time. I'm excited.
Yeah, and you know what? Hey, we can get you on more, Ryan. This can be a regular. We'll have you a recurring role. We'll change your hair, your makeup. We'll change things around. You'll be different characters.
Perfect. I'll get some stuff behind me, get you all dialed in.
But let's get this one under the belt first. First of all, I want to congratulate you on an extremely successful season. I know you didn't win the championship, but it was another successful season for the San Diego Legion. You have a great stadium, arguably the best in the league in Snapdragon. And miraculously, I say this without exaggeration, you just completed your 7th season of Major League Rugby.
I know, it's amazing, right? Who would have thought we'd be 7 years old? It feels like time is just flying by. So
we've survived pandemics, inflation, you name it, we've survived it. You guys have done this. Do you just sit back and get out of the fog of war and look back and say, wow, we're doing this?
We often joke as an ownership group about the book that this is going to write like. So yeah, chapter 4 is disease and famine, and then chapter 5 is locusts, right? So, but we still are surviving.
Here's a question for you. Are you enjoying it?
You know, I am. Some parts have been amazing. Some parts have been far more difficult. The challenge has been really pushed me to my limits, to be honest with you. I'd run businesses. I'd done a lot of other things, but this is like a whole nother level. Sports is an emotional business. It makes you make decisions that you probably wouldn't make if it was just making widgets or building buildings, right? So you got to really look at people's lives and motivations and energy and how do you creating fans and media. It's everything. So, and
you guys have some change.
We did.
You changed your coaching. Danny Lee is now gone, and John Minetti, he's in. He's the Aussie Sevens coach coming in.
He's also a very experienced coach. We're really excited to have him. You know, very, very nuts and bolts around what he wants to create and the tough men that he wants to build and the type of structure that he wants to make happen. So we're excited to have him on board. So
let's talk about players, because you guys have had some star power in that lineup. You've had Ma'ananu, you've had Matt Giteau, you've had Isaac Ross. This year, you even brought in a Greg Peterson. You had the best locks in the league, at least the largest locks in the league, yeah. Certainly. Is the team in a transition mode, or is it just a tweak mode?
Oh, I mean, we're going to see a lot of retirement. I'm sure if anybody's been following our social, we've been thanking a lot of players for their time and their efforts and talking about their careers. You know, you mentioned Isaac and Ma and you know, Mikey Teo is retired. You know, we're going to see a lot of people transitioning out, and some of those guys are going to stay with us in the form of coaching or in developing, you know, youth programming, all sorts of good stuff. But you know, we're certainly going to feel a little bit of transition, but I think we're going to be a very competitive team ready for a championship.
Adding to it allows me to jump to the college rugby landscape.
Yeah.
Right. We've narrowed it down pretty much from a sea of acronyms to basically 2. We've got the CRAA, the College Rugby Association of America, and we have the NCR, National Collegiate Rugby. You know, we don't really have a farm system for Major League Rugby. And it would be nice to be able to draw on the college landscape, the college pool of players. Is there some kind of magic wand that we can wave to help improve the college rugby quality of player and maybe get those 2 entities under one umbrella?
No, there's no magic wand. There is a game plan, Matt, to help create better coaching and to help improve the college landscape. It starts at both the junior college level and getting into your local community colleges with the teams that are already in existence. So MLR is already supporting. So in the case of San Diego Legion and some other MLR teams, we're supporting local colleges and junior colleges with some of our players and our coaches to help improve the level of coaching and exposure that those kids get. So we see that there's, in the case for us, you've got Charlie Purdon, he's the coach at University of San Diego, and Ryan Mattias going to San Diego State to help out there. That's a great way for MLR to support that. But I also think that just improving the overall coaching landscape for youth and for college is going to benefit us all greatly.
Would the MLR try to facilitate a uniting of the clans between the NCR and the CRAA and say, hey guys, this is in all our best interests? Because, looking from my perspective, if I'm a sponsor or I'm a network or I'm an ad partner, I'm looking at this and I'm like, come on, you got two separate entities. Can we just combine the two? And I think that would help you guys as well. What do you think about that?
I mean, what you're saying is accurate, all right? We need a cohesive landscape around rugby. One of its biggest issues in the U.S. is how fragmented it's been. One of the goals of MLR is to create a pinnacle environment where you have aspirational points and aspirational, levels of job creation. I mean, for lack of a better word, for an athlete to come to it, aspire to make a professional career. And we hope that we can be a unifying force for that. I mean, we're supportive of that. Bill Gorn, prior to stepping away from the MLR and becoming the CEO for USA Rugby, was very active in trying to bring those guys together, and we're going to continue to do that. So we see ourselves hopefully as a Henry Kissinger, if you will. So, well, if you want to facilitate a meeting, I'm happy to do it. I'll show up. I mean, we believe that unification in rugby in the U.S. is the only way that this becomes what it can and should be. I mean, that's been one of the goals for the last 7 years. It's the goal around the World Cup. It was the goal around all that we've set up with Imagine Rugby, and it's the same here at the college level.
And then we could start creating the stars in college.
Correct.
So like when the MLR draft comes along, everybody is not just learning or getting indoctrinated to the draft players, right? They know who's who, right? A big thing.
And there's no mystery here. We need to be a varsity level program. And so we have to get some key colleges to adopt that as such. And once we can do those things, then we're into the infrastructure.
All right. I want to change gears a little bit. I want to talk about expansion for the league. Let's say I have a group out of Obetz, Ohio, just outside Columbus. We have investors with capital that are willing to operate with the league, but will only handle operating costs at first and can't really handle a franchise fee. But we have a stadium, we have an organic fan base from the first iteration of professional rugby on the American landscape, which was Pro Rugby USA. They actually built the stadium called the Fortress in Obetz, which is just outside Columbus. Is there any way that we could potentially work around or get into the league and maybe not share in any profits that came along until we paid back that franchise fee? But in the meantime, as a smaller market team got up and running, is that possible?
Well, Matt, it sounds like you got a pretty, that sounds more than hypothetical. So if you want me to talk to the group, I'm happy to.
No, that literally is hypothetical. I mean, there's other groups. There are other groups. There's a group in Tampa, for instance. There's
I mean, we're starting to get more and more interest by people, and the answer is that our group has come up with what we're calling an associate member or an affiliate member that may not be a direct owner in the MLR. Currently, there is a program that we've kind of incubated because we want to see more growth in the MLR quicker than what we're seeing it now. And so we have entertained some thoughts like that. The answer is, I mean, it's not a fully baked program, but I think that there's an opportunity for us to work with different groups that still make sense.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I'm saying there's a chance.
Yeah. All right, good. All right. So we've got hope on the college landscape. We've got more hope on the MLR landscape. And I'm not one that's not hopeful about the MLR because I've seen what you guys have gone through in keeping this league alive. Again, back, you say the famine and everything else, but it's true. So that kind of segues to the growth and expansion. Will need players. And, you're a very diverse group of owners. Everybody's successful in their own enterprises. And now you're all in the same room trying to figure all this stuff out. and there are different philosophies on the relationship with USA Rugby. Are we in the business to develop the national team? Are we in the business to be a professional sports franchise in a capitalistic market, which is American sports? Where do your thoughts land on this?
I mean, I think I said this kind of the first time that you had me on the show and you tried to pin me down with this. I think, and I'm now only speaking for Ryan Patterson and this as, San Diego Legion, but I'm speaking for Ryan Patterson. I think we have to do it all at once. I think we need a combination of foreign players in order to help develop the best domestic players. And I think that we need that foreign level of coaching because we just don't have enough of that resource here in the US so that we can develop more US coaching. And we need to continue to build both. And because of the size of the US, it's not like we can just extract one group and put them and start to play them in another group. I mean, I know those models work for other people, but here we have to think big and we have to think that we can do it from the grassroots and the top, and we have to do it all at once.
And what are your thoughts on the anthem, the Charlotte anthem supported by World Rugby in conjunction with you guys, the owners?
I thought it was an absolute success. I know a lot of people poke holes, and I've heard some of them, but they don't understand what we were trying to create or the velocity in which we tried to create it in. I think we've already gotten some players who wouldn't get exposure and have gotten them exposure. I think we've already helped the Eagles develop some of the people. When you look at the people from the MLR position and what the anthem looks at, and then where I really point to what the anthem has the opportunity is looking at the U20s team and how successful they were. And now you have a collegiate tie-in that you're talking about. You have a professional tie-in that you're talking about. I think it was all the things that we want. I mean, can we improve it? The answer is yes. There's things that we're going to tweak this year to get them more of our better domestic players playing together so that they're continuing to develop the USA squad or continuing to develop our relationship. But it was a win. It was an absolute win.
Getting your opinion on the international test window thing this season, you had the regular season end, and then you had a 2-week layoff before the playoffs start. What was your thought on that?
I think it posed a lot of challenges. I think that not realizing that just even being all through summer, right, and keeping that continuity, I think was challenging for some. I don't think it was the benefit to some others that people thought it was going to be, that have extreme weather, both cold and hot. So I think that for us, it makes more sense to dial it back and finish everything before the test window. And I think that that's what we're going to move towards this year.
Overall, how would you rate this season compared to the 6th season?
I mean, this was an unbelievable breakout season in terms of the number of growth, the social media, the media itself, the number of eyes on for all of our games. When we'll send you some metrics, Matt, so you can really get some sense of what I'm talking about. But it's been unbelievable. And with the finals that near 12,000 people, and I know people don't fully understand, but the level of energy in that stadium for hosting it in a non-team based environment, neutral site final was epic. The level of energy in rugby right now couldn't be better. The women's bronze medal has been huge for putting eyes on and putting the word rugby in. I mean, I feel like all of that kind of groundwork and sod laying and seed laying and all the farming that we've been doing is really starting to pay off right now. When I look at what Houston's doing and what was happening in the Free Jacks and the energy in Miami, I think it's an unbelievable, market that we can capitalize in and grow. And you start talking about future. Now people can see the future in Orlando and some other places. I think I'm bullish on the future for rugby here.
All right, so here we go with that question that I ask all your colleagues. When I say all, there's not many of you that are in doing this, and you need to be applauded. Next year, how many teams, and then how many teams in 5 years?
The goal is 12 teams, right? This year, just keep everything the status quo, grow and be better at what we're doing. Better media, better attendance, continue to grow the model. And if I had my goal in 5 years, it would be at 24. So,
and you mentioned Orlando.
I think it's a great market. Oh. So,
but we don't have any.
I've got no super secrets for you, but I'll tell you where I would like to be: Orlando and Nashville and Columbus and Cleveland. The Midwest is phenomenal. Yep. Indianapolis. There's a lot of work going on in rugby in Indianapolis. So there's a lot of great markets. So
all right, exciting times, Mr. Patterson. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll be right back after this.
Digs like a demented mole there.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we are back with Mr. Peter Bernick of the Chicago Hounds, the owner of the Chicago Hounds. Peter, welcome to MLR Weekly.
Thanks so much, Matt. Good to be here.
All right, so Peter, just so for my edification and the folks at home, your background is finance and investing. Is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to describe it. I've been investing in kind of early stage companies for the last 15 years or so, as well as in public and private equity. I work for a family office, which is essentially a private investment company that looks for opportunities that are kind of anything from, very simple stuff to more complicated stuff like sports investing.
How did you get involved in rugby, and how did that conversation go with your family?
It was an interesting one for sure. My family's been involved in kind of small sport investing for years. My brother and my grandfather have been in thoroughbred horse racing. My grandpa since the 50s, my brother for much of the last 25 years. And Ireland is probably the largest non-US market for horse racing. Through my brother's work, he met a group in Ireland that was pursuing an MLR team in Chicago. And so they approached him and said, "Hey, do you know anyone who might be interested?" He kind of chuckled and said, "I'd love to introduce you to my brother." And we've been looking at sports opportunities in Chicago for much of the last 10 years. We've looked at things like, MLS and smaller. We've looked at minority pieces of large investments in the US and honestly just never found the right fit. And it felt kind of serendipitous that rugby came around. I'm not a lifelong rugby fan or anything. I just really enjoy the little that I've seen of the game, or the little that I had seen at the time. And the opportunity came across. I met Matt Satchwell and Phil Groves and James English, who are my partners. And, I just really liked their vision. I like the opportunity of MLR. I think, obviously we have a long way to go, but we've come a long way as well. And with the 2031 World Cup coming, as an investor, there's just very few opportunities where what the future holds as long as you can perform. And so I see rugby as an American sport that Americans just don't know it yet. And as somebody who comes from that lens, I think that's what's most exciting to me. Like, I invest in consumer products. And so what you're trying to do is find something that a consumer wants and wants more of, but ideally that they don't know about yet. And that's rugby to me. I think an 80-minute game that, fits in a 2-hour TV window that has 30 or 4 minutes of like really high-flying action, this sets up really well for the American audience and psyche. And I think, once they see it at the highest level at the World Cup, I just think it's going to explode here, because I think it's such an awesome game. There's so much behind it in terms of the culture and the people. And I keep looking for reasons why I don't think that this can work. And that's what investors do. But there's so much here to be excited about. And we got in fast. Don't get me wrong. My conversations with my family were crazy.
Got in about an hour, right?
I would say Matt and Phil might have thought it felt like an hour. We dug in pretty quickly, but we knew we had a tight window, and that's why the opportunity existed. With Austin and LA coming out of the league, it was one thing to fill a slot. It was another thing to have a talented roster on day one. My rugby knowledge is pretty light, but having James English, who had built New York already and knew MLR backwards and forwards, and having Phil Groves and Matt Satchwell and Darren Morris, who knew Chicago and knew rugby. And then having the Irish connections of, the Carney brothers and a gentleman named, Nick Mullen and Hugh McMahon. These are guys that had the rugby side covered. I'd like to think that I have the insight on the investment side covered, and we've been a pretty successful enterprise thus far. I think we knew it would be hard to get it launched quickly, but we knew we had to. I think we all expect to be better than we were in year one, but we're pretty proud of what we, built in terms of the brand and the fan experience and all that. And then in year two, we're really pleased with where we ended up on the rugby field, despite some ups and downs, and we're right where we want to be. We think we should be competing for championships, and we think that we should be elevating the league with the way we operate, both in terms of on the field and off the field. And I know you just spoke to Ryan Patterson, who's just, an awesome roadmap for how to do it in San Diego. The beauty of sports and the beauty of Chicago in particular is we don't have to do anything that hasn't been done before. We just have to execute it very well and learn from where our partners have succeeded and learn from where they've struggled and hopefully shorten our learning curve. But we're pumped about MLR and we're excited about Chicago. And the season's been over for a couple of months. I'm ready to get back to it. Look, I believe that if you aren't willing to take something on yourself, then you can't ask other people to do it. We had kind of committed to Chicago, and I went back and started watching games. And the first game, I think, as you can imagine, that I watched was Seattle and New York in the championship game in the season before we joined. And I will admit to having my jaw drop and my stomach raise when I saw the crowd, in New York for that game. And at the time I was just worried. I said, oh my God, if people aren't willing to watch the championship game, like what have I gotten myself into? But then I did my research and I learned that, that game was only in New York because of the outcomes of the previous two playoff matches. They weren't necessarily expected to be hosting a championship game. They had 6 days to get it on the field, and New York's a tough market. And so you all of a sudden are playing, out of your main venue. And that's how you end up with 2,000 people there. And I went to the other owners and I just said, guys, this is our advertising. We're on Fox. We're gonna have 1 million+ people tuning in. We need to look bigger than we are, and we need to look like we know what we're trying to aspire to. And so we, with a 4-month window, I think put on a pretty damn good show in Chicago.
You did.
Spent a lot of money.
I was there. It was great.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the Dropkick Murphys were incredible, and
great.
Being from Quincy, it's like we set it up for the Free Jacks. We're done doing all that, but. Shaquille O'Neal was there, and he later came back and did North Coast Music Festival just this past weekend at the same building, and all of a sudden there were 50, 60,000 people in the audience. And so I know you can put an event on. I know it looked good on TV, and thankfully Ryan took the kind of mantle and took it to the next level with what we did in San Diego this year. And that's our job, is to introduce anyone who sees this game for the first time and make it look like it can be the kind of specter that it is. Create that roadmap in Chicago. We have an awesome market. We have a great building, great rugby, history and fan base here. Ireland and New Zealand are coming back in 25. Like that is the exact pathway we're looking for as the World Cup kind of approaches, is to keep growing like the primary rugby audience here. And MLR is the best product available.
All right. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to ask you about some things circulating around R.U.M, Rugby United Marketing, the app for the league, and the TV series. Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? Back with Peter Bernick of the Chicago Hounds. Peter, we left a cliffhanger, so to speak, before the commercial break about R.U.M, Rugby United Marketing. Spoke to your colleagues, Marty Power, last week, and Ryan Patterson a little bit about it this week, but everybody's kind of pointing toward you as being the point guy on this thing. Is that accurate?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but I certainly have been happy to take a lead on it from an owner perspective. Nick Benson, and a few of our other guys have been leading this, but we are in the process of putting this group together. And the idea is to, really accelerate the way we're thinking about the business. And that involves, the marketing elements, the commercial elements, the media, and the merchandise, and giving kind of our league office the opportunity to put their foot on the gas a little bit. We have a defined timeline of the 31 World Cup where we need to be a major sport in this country at that point, and we also need to be ready to take another huge leap forward after. And I hope that R.U.M gives us the opportunity to take that chance. This is just such a massive global sport, and it's such a success on the international level. and on the international team level. I think at the club level, it's still kind of a work in progress, you know, particularly vis-a-vis like how the international clubs work. And the MLR set up to kind of turn that on its head, and capital can accelerate that. I'm not shy in saying that I think this needs to be the biggest league in the world. There's also a better opportunity for that to exist than there's ever been. There are struggles in England. There are struggles in Australia. You know, the other traditional rugby markets might not be big enough to take on a global landscape, whereas the US is used to doing this. R.U.M is mostly about giving us a platform and an investable entity that will allow professional capital to come into the space without taking away the rugby expertise from the teams.
So are there particular areas where you'd cherry pick spending money from R.U.M on areas of entertainment specifically or marketing specifically?
Yeah, I think maybe touching on it a little bit around the championship game as like an example. Whenever somebody turns on our product on TV, it needs to look extremely professional. We need standards raised in terms of TV production, in terms of what the game looks like on the field. But when you turn on your TV, you want to know you're watching a rugby game, and you want to know that it's a big spectacle. And so quality of TV production, you know, that's things like cameras, and that's things like lighting, but that's also what the field looks like. And I think it's all one big advertisement. Anytime you have a game on, whether it's on the Rugby Network or it's on YouTube or it's on Fox or it's on, you know, our local channel, you're going to get somebody watching that who hasn't seen it before. And we cannot give them excuses to turn the TV off. And in my opinion, our sport still often looks too minor league to be taken seriously by the way it looks on TV. I think our in-game experience when you're at the field is better. Because I think you get an opportunity to see things that you can't see at professional sports level. We've got our players, you know, available after games. Our fans are on the field. It's awesome. That's one area that we should invest. I know Ryan's gung-ho on a video game. You know, I think getting that sort of thing right is important. You know, we've invested in a docu-series that we hope will bring some more light to the sport and the team. But really, the R.U.M dollars are about pursuing kind of excellence in the production and marketing and merchandising side. And the best way to grow that is to expand, to have more teams in more markets with great buildings and committed ownership groups. And I think R.U.M, you know, is a small part of getting that done.
How many teams in 2025 and how many teams in 5 years?
I'm very much hoping the answer to 2025 is 12. I think in 5 years, we should have between 16 and 20 teams.
Where do we get the players? Where do you stand on international slots?
I'm less religious about international slots. I think it's about who we bring in. You know, if DuPont wants to come over, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll scrape up some francs for him.
There's room for him in Chicago if necessary.
We'll find some room for Antoine DuPont. All right, on that note, we're out of time. I want to thank Mr. Peter Bernick of the Chicago Hounds, Mr. Ryan Patterson of the San Diego Legion, and thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other programs, including the Rugby Odds. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, sign up for our weekly newsletter, and please join our American Red Cross blood donor team.